In this video, we're going to talk about the for loop, and the syntax of a for loop is similar to the while loop. We have the for statement and the loop body. So for example, let's suppose we have a string and we want to print out every character of this string on a single line. So one way to do that is, of course, to get every character from the string and print it out manually. However, this is not practical as we said before, and the alternative way or the more practical way is to create a for loop. So let's suppose we have x, and inside this x we have hello. This is a string, and for words, for letters, I'm sorry, in this x we're going to print the letters, or we can say letter. So for every letter in this X, we're going to print this letter. This is pretty simple, and Python is very good at this implementations. And in this case, we got HELLO, and what we did here basically is that we took this X, hello, and Python reads it as a string, and we took every character and place it in letter, and then we print out letter. Now we also have the range function. So for example, if you want to loop through a set of code of a at a specified number of times, we can use this range function. So for example, if we want to loop through a specific code for 6 times, we can simply use this function. Let's say for x in use the function range of 6 and print x. Let me run this code and see what we're going to get. We're going to get 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. So here we have 6 elements or 6 numbers, and that indicates that this loop run for 6 times. So what we did here is that we created a range, and this range of 6 from 0 till 5, and we gave x these numbers from 0 till 5 as we said, and then we printed out, so we got 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. Now sometimes we might want to start at a specific index. We don't want to start at the 0. So one way to do that is to modify this range function. We have an optional argument that we can add. For example, let's say that we want to loop through the numbers 3 to 8, and in this case we just type them here, and we're going to get 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and excluding 8. Now, as we did with the while loop, we also have here the else in this for loop. So let's suppose we have this for loop that loop through numbers between 3 and 5 and 8, I'm sorry. And in this case, when done, we're going to print out that we are finished. And in this case, just else print done. And what we're going to do here is that we're giving x the values between 3 and 8, print them out, and then after reaching the number 8, we're going to print that we're done. So then let me run this code, and we're going to get 3, 4, 5, 6, and 7, and then the message done. Now let's talk about nested loops. And nested loop means that we have two or more loops inside each other. So for example, let me create a string, and the string is hello, and the other one will be world. And in this case, we're going to enter the first for loop, and for hello, let me name it hello in X. We're going to enter a second for loop, and in this for loop world and Y, we're going to print X, hello and world. Now let me run this code and then I'll explain it. Let's go back here. So here we have some, they may seem some random characters or some random letters, however, they are printed in a specified format. So let me go ahead and talk about what we did here. First of all, we created the string that is X and the second string Y with the word in it. Now, first of all, we're going to loop through the X hello through the characters of this string, and inside this for loop, we created another for loop, and we're going to loop through the characters of the second word. And in this case, first we entered this for loop. So hello is the first character now, that is H. And as we can see here, we're going to print H 5 times, I think. And this is because we're entering the second for loop. And now, after entering the second for loop, we have the hello that is fixed till now. It is H. And in this for loop, we're going to loop through these characters W, O, R, L, and D. And we're going to print H with the specific character from world, and here we have W, O, R, L, and D. Then, after finishing with the first character, after finishing from this for loop, and then we move back to the second for loop, the outer for loop, and in this case, we're going to change the letter from H to E. As we can see here, we're going to print E, W, E, O, E, R, E, L. Then we're going to shift it to L 2 times since we have two L's, and finally O. So what we're doing here is that we are going to enter the first for loop and fix the hello, the character, and enter the second one and work in this for loop until we finish from it. Then we can go back to this outer for loop. So in other words, the inner loop will be executed 1 time for each iteration of the outer for loop. Now let us use this for loop in some algorithms or code. So for example, let's suppose we have a string x, and inside the string we have these random letters, and we're going to count how many times the letter A occurred in this string. So let me create a counter, and it is equal to 0. Now let's create our for loop, and for characters, character n, this x, we're going to check. First of all, we're going to check if this character is equal to A. If character will be equal to A, in this case, we're going to increment count by 1. Then, after exiting the for loop, we're going to print count and count. So let me go ahead and run this code. I'm going to get A, I'm sorry, not equal to A, to this letter. Let me run this code. We're going to get count 5. So we have 5 A's in this string, and if you want to make sure, this is the first 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. So what did we do here? First, we have our string, and then we have our counter. Now we created our for loop and looped through every character inside the string by using for character in X, and this is just in a name. We can name it C, for example, and it will not affect our code. Just make sure that Whenever you change here, you should change here. Now, for every character in this string x, we're going to compare it to the letter A. If it is equal to this letter, then we're going to increment the counter. And after exiting this for loop, we're just going to print the count, how many times A occurred in this string. Now, the second code I'm going to write is to get a string that contains some numbers and compute the sum of these numbers. So let me create a string, and inside the string we have some numbers, and for x, let me create the sum first. Sum will be equal to 0 for x, for number n x. We're going to take this number and convert it to an integer so that we can use it for the sum. So we're going to integer to create an integer called integer, and we're going to convert the number and then add it to the sum equal to sum plus this integer, and finally we're going to print out sum followed by our sum. Now let me run this code. We're going to get 71. So the sum of every number here, 1 plus 2 plus 4 plus 3 plus 9 and so on, is 71. Now, the last algorithm we're going to implement is finding the maximum or minimum in a list of numbers. So let's suppose we have list of numbers is equal to x, and we have 1, 24, 23, 56, 55, and 19. And in this case, let me loop through this list using for loop, and let me create a variable outside. Let me name it max, and it will be equal to 0. And while entering the for loop, the first time max will be equal to 0, and if this number is greater than max, then we'll simply assign this number to be equal to max. So max will be equal to this number, and we'll print that the current maximum is followed by max. Then after finishing from this for loop, we'll print that the maximum number is and max. Let's run this code, see what we're going to get. The first time we entered this for loop, we had max equal to 0. However, 1 is greater than 0, so max is now equal to 1. And we print out that this is the current maximum. Now we got to 44, and in this case 44 is also greater than 1, so the current maximum is 44. However, 23 is not greater than 44, so we'll just skip it. We'll skip this condition since this condition is not satisfied, so we'll just skip this line of code, and then we're going to get to 56, and 56 is greater than 44, so the current maximum is 56 now. Then 55 and 19 are less than 56, so we don't have to do anything until exiting this for loop and print out the maximum number is, and followed by the maximum. Now this is the code for finding the minimum. So we have this list, and we're going to check if number is less than minimum. We're going to assign minimum to be equal to the number, print the current minimum, and finally print the minimum number. And here the minimum number is 0. I'm sorry, here we need to assign a very large number, let's say 10,000, and the minimum number is 8, then 3, then 1, and the minimum number is 1. So this is it for the for loop. It is widely used, and we're going to use it so much in our next lessons. So see you in the next videos.